Can I say something right there? Tell me who you're with. WDSU. Okay, and CBS.
NBC's over here on the right.
Oh, that's an unusual position.
I don't get it.
You wouldn't.
Of course you wouldn't. That, of course, is Senator John Kennedy yesterday at the press conference in Louisiana. And maybe he was having a little fun with NBC News. Welcome to Thursday. Welcome to 2025. It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for Chris. And today and tomorrow, and then he returns on Monday. I hope your New Year's was uneventful. And yes, we're trying to put together everything that is to be known or to be understood about what happened in New Orleans, Louisiana at, it was 2:15 Louisiana time. It was around 3:15 East Coast time on the 1st when a car drove through the French Quarter and killed, at this point, 15 people. Many others, dozens more, still fighting for their lives. And what we know and what we don't know is going to be discussed today because there is much to discuss. This really was a terrible incident. Anyone who's been to New Orleans knows what an incredible city it is. If you've been there for Mardi Gras, you understand the attitude and the partying of the French Quarter, and you know the crowds that can be on the streets of Bourbon Street and through the French Quarter at all hours of the night. Now, this was at 2:15 local time in the morning on the 1st. And there's still a whole bunch of people who are saying, well, why weren't the barricades up? Why weren't the bollards, as they call them, up? And how could they have allowed this sidewalk clearance to be big enough for a car to get through? Yeah, it's easy to be so perfect on this after the fact. It really is. And I get that. I understand that. But we need to find out the details of why it happened. We pretty much know how. We know how it happened. A really bad guy drove a car through a bunch of crowds and then ended up dying because, thank God, the New Orleans police ran towards danger. There are many videos, if you've watched the story and the videos unfold, there are many videos from the streets of New Orleans that show the cameras at the moment of the attack, and I'm calling it an attack because I think it was a terror attack, that you'll notice the uniformed officers of the New Orleans Police Department turn on their heels and run towards the danger. Another example of why we love law enforcement and why they're so important to us. So many things that happened after this. There was the early morning press conference. There was a mid-afternoon press conference, more press events throughout the day. And then the speech from Joe Biden, the 4-minute address from Joe Biden. We'll get into that because we learned nothing new from that. And the dots that are being connected today are really kind of interesting. They started connecting them last night. All of the bad information that has been debunked. Also, you have to raise questions as to why we were told this. Initially, within just a matter of hours of this horrific terror attack on the people of New Orleans and on America, basically, because let's face it, there was an ISIS flag on the back of the truck. We were told the truck came through Eagle Pass, Texas, 2 days ago. That was all over the internet. And now I'm wondering why. Why did that come out so quickly? The truck came through Eagle Pass, Texas. A license plate reader saw it. That would give you the indication that this was some sort of person who crossed into our country illegally and then somehow got a hold of this truck. And then little by little, we started getting the leaks of information that were a little more credible. Who the driver was. who owned the truck, because the truck was not being driven by the owner. And then overnight we find out that this Turo company, it's an app that allows you to rent cars or rent your car to strangers. You don't have to be a car rental company. You don't have to be a Hertz or an Avis or a Dollar or whomever. You can rent your car out. And I do remember, I think there were a Super Bowl ad recently, this Turo company, this app. Turns out that the killer, I know everybody's saying the suspect. No, that's pretty, we know this guy's the killer and he's dead. So is he going to sue us? No. The man that killed at least 15 people rented this truck through this app. And then we hear, just a couple hours later after that, that a Tesla Cybertruck has blown up in front of a Trump property in Las Vegas. And I was watching some of the videos, and I'm sure you were as well, watching the videos from various points around the Trump building, the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, and you saw the flames coming out of the Cybertruck. You're like, oh, my God. And immediately, I think we all kind of put together the story that this is important. This issue is a statement. This event is a statement because you have a Cybertruck, which you immediately associate with Elon Musk, and you have the Trump building, and you put Musk and Trump together, and we think, gee, I wonder if this has something to do with, I don't know, the incoming administration. But there apparently are people among us who are not smart and don't fully understand what's going on, or are incapable of putting two and two together and coming up with four. And one such person was on MSNBC earlier today, I guess confused by what was the point of the exploding Cybertruck in front of the Trump casino.
Obviously, the president-elect, soon to take office, it's his property in Vegas. There's been an explosion there. It involved a Cybertruck. So what message is somebody trying to send with that? That's something that has authorities in Las Vegas, federal, state, and local, quite concerned, quite interested.
Quite concerned and interested. Really, you cannot put the two together, Tom Winter. You can't figure it out. Yes, it's a commentary. And once again, it appears to be the left, which is showing us that they are the violent ones. Now, thankfully, the only person who died in the explosion of the Cybertruck was the driver, which we probably think is the person who wanted that to blow up. Thank God for Elon Musk allowing the feds and anyone investigating this, the New Orleans Police Department, the Las Vegas Police Department, to have access to all the data involving this truck. There are a couple of sidebar issues here. If you don't think you're being tracked everywhere you go, these events of the last couple of days certainly are proof that everywhere you go, someone is watching you. Every single place you go. And everything you do. The app that rented the Cybertruck to the man who is now dead was the same app that rented the Ford truck, which, by the way, was, I believe, an electric Ford F-150, the Lightning. So curious that two electric vehicles were involved in these incidents. But the Turo app was used to rent both the Cybertruck and the Ford F-150 in New Orleans. But let's get back to Tesla. The explosion of the, whatever it was, device in the back of the Tesla pickup truck and the Cybertruck was pretty intense, but the truck remained fairly structurally strong and solid. And the driver died, yes, and 7 people apparently who were innocent bystanders died, but Musk sent his team there immediately to see what they could do to help out in the investigation, and they also gave the data for this truck. And they saw it had been rented through Turo in Colorado and then driven to Las Vegas. And they tracked the charging because every time you plug your car in somewhere, it sends a message back to the Tesla mothership, hey, this truck is being charged at this supercharger. So they were able to put together, literally in a matter of a couple of very short hours, where the truck was rented, the route it took, and now because Tesla does gather data on everywhere you go, as does pretty much everything in your life, your cell phone, everything, they now have the timeline on the truck and how it circled the Trump building an hour before the explosion. This truly was amazing. They now have a history of, they track the entire movement of this truck. And we probably have the same data on the Ford truck that killed all the people in Louisiana. The truck didn't kill people. I'm sure he was angry. The person who was driving the truck killed the people, but he used the truck. We probably have all that data, but it was the Cybertruck that gave us all of the information pretty quickly, and it's been made public as well. We will look at all of this and try and piece together some of the data and some of the thoughts on it. And you, of course, are welcome to weigh in and see if there's anything you missed. We were talking early yesterday morning, Michael Piercy and I going back and forth, discussing this on a text chain. And following the assistant agent in charge of the FBI office in Louisiana, she's the assistant agent in charge. Why couldn't we get the agent in charge? I'm just saying. A terror attack doesn't warrant that. She had a nose ring, a piercing in her nostril, her left nostril, at the early press conference. And then at the 2 p.m. press conference, it was gone. Maybe somebody told her, hey, you want to make it a little more professional, maybe you leave out the nose jewelry when you're up there representing the FBI and the Department of Justice. I'm just saying, yes, image is important. But we'll talk about that and the contradictions, because we got an immediate contradiction in the very first press conference. We'll play the clip around the corner. An immediate contradiction between the FBI and the local law enforcement. And yes, I had the same reaction you did when you saw the superintendent who is in charge of the New Orleans Police Department. Yeah, I thought it was Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies too. It's not. It's just someone who I don't think inspires a lot of confidence. But we'll talk about that as well. And if there are any breaking news stories about this, we'll give you the update on that too. Let's grab one quick call before we wrap up the first block here. Jim is in Naperville, Illinois. Jim, welcome to the Chris Plant Show. Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you folks as well. You know, thanks for filling in for Chris.
You're welcome,
you're doing
sir.
an excellent job.
Thank you.
What's so insidious that a friend of mine pointed out, that what's so insidious about this driver in New Orleans is that he used an electric F-150 Lightning, F-150 Lightning, and which weighs about 1,500 pounds. It's heavy as heck, and a lot of the victims were mowed flat after not being able to hear the thing approach. You know, a normal truck, you could hear the acceleration. You could hear it coming. An electric vehicle like that, you're not going to hear it.
You know, that's Jim, that
probably have a chance to turn around.
Jim, that's a really good point, and one that I have not heard anywhere else. And you're absolutely right. The silence of the electric trucks is probably something that contributed to the reality of the massive numbers of people that were hit. They may not have heard it. It's very quiet. Even though you hear the tires, because that's a big truck. And it makes a little bit of noise on the roads. We'll dive into that. Very good point, Jim. Thank you. This audience always so smart. It is 888-630-9625. Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Happy New Year. Yes, it's 2025. We'll get into some of the New Year's Eve stuff that happened in New York and on some of the crazy television shows. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris, and we're spending, obviously, considerable time talking about the terror attack, and I'm going to continue to call it a terror attack in New Orleans, Louisiana. And we will try and get any and all breaking news to you as it becomes available to us. Right now, it's pretty much what we knew yesterday at the end of the day before Joe Biden came out and spoke. And we really didn't need to hear from him because he didn't add anything to it. But one of my favorite moments from the event yesterday was when Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana stood up and gave some comments. Yes, he did give NBC a little bit of ribbing there because someone said they're on the right. And he said that was an unusual place for them to be. And they didn't get it. But Senator Kennedy talking about giving the FBI the benefit of the doubt.
Look, the FBI is not going to be able to answer those questions, okay? They will eventually, I promise you, okay? Once the FBI has a chance to investigate all this, along working with state police, working with Homeland Security, working with the city of New Orleans, they're going to tell you what happened. I can promise you that, or I'm going to raise fresh hell. But right now, they're in the process of trying to catch the other bad guys. And I want to give them the benefit of the doubt for a while.
For a while, he's going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I think that's more of a message to the FBI than to the press, because they were trying to tell the press to stop asking questions that can't get answered. But that really, I believe, was a very not so subtle message to the FBI. You only have so much time. The clock is ticking. And you guys probably have the same feelings. Like Pete in Vienna, Virginia, who called the Chris Plant Show. Hello, Pete. Welcome to the program.
Hey, how you doing today? Yeah, my comment on all this, or my observation, is I think what's being queued up here is another incomplete FBI investigation. And it seems like that's the new pattern with the FBI. It used to be we get our man and they give us all the facts, and we don't get that anymore. We just kind of get, it's happened, it's done, it's over with. I mean, you look at like the shooting in Las Vegas, bombs outside the DNC on January 6th. We can go on and on and on. It seems like they're queuing up this. There's been multiple incidents where we don't get all the facts, and it seems like they're hiding something. And every time that happens, it's just degradation of credibility.
I'm hoping, Pete, and I'm up against the clock here as you hear the music. You're not wrong, but I'm hoping all of that changes with the installation of Pam Bondi and the installation of Kash Patel and the inauguration of Donald Trump. And a happy new year, and welcome back to the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka, that's me, sitting in for Chris Plant. It is 2025, and yes, of course, we're talking about yesterday and the horrific terror attack in New Orleans that has killed at least 15 people, many others still in the hospital fighting for their lives. And what's to be done? Today, the Sugar Bowl was moved from yesterday, actually, to today, and there's still discussion about the Sugar Bowl happening. And New Orleans has the Mardi Gras just around the corner, and then they have the Super Bowl as well. So there is great concern for the safety of the people, not only who live in New Orleans, but who would be attending these events. And there is still discussion today about whether or not it's appropriate for the Sugar Bowl to be played. I know there are 15 families who are planning funerals right now. There are 15 families who on New Year's Eve went to bed thinking, hey, we're going to wake up and it's going to be 2025, a new year, all of the hope that usually surrounds a new year. And then they got the news that a member of their family was killed in a terror attack in New Orleans. And now they're planning funerals. And there are about 25 or more other families that are trying to figure out whether or not their loved ones are going to survive. So is it appropriate? That's one of the questions I asked today. That is one of the questions is it appropriate to hold the Sugar Bowl? There are some people who say, well, if we don't hold it, we give in to the terrorists. And there are others who say if we do hold it, it's disrespectful to the families of the 15 who died. And also, what about the 25-plus families who have family members still fighting? And until we get the 4 or 5 other individuals that the FBI said they were looking for, we were told they were looking for 4 to 5 other individuals who may have been associated with this killer, who I don't want to give this guy's name any notoriety, any fame at all. But it's a tough question, isn't it? 888-630-9625. I believe the Louisiana Attorney General was going public saying that she wanted the game moved today. I think we have a clip of that, Michael, don't we?
Under the circumstances, there might be others out there. Is it wise to go forward with the football game, the Sugar Bowl, even a day later?
You know, not my decision, but I would like to see it delayed at least another day. If they asked my opinion, I would tell them that. I think that it was a wise decision to delay it at least a day. This is an active crime scene, and, you know, they just finished removing some of the bodies, and they still haven't removed all of them. And I still think that we probably need to wait an extra day.
It's such a hard decision. And there are people that, you know, the majority of the people that were going to be attending that game had flown into town, had made hotel reservations. Likely today was going to be the day they were going home. You know, if you go to a bowl game and it's over by 8 or 9 o'clock at night, the game's scheduled to start at 4 o'clock today, then you're probably making plans on being at the airport. If you're like me, you want to be on the first flight out to get ahead of all the airport traffic. But there are people who are probably going to linger in New Orleans for a day, and all those flights, all those hotel rooms, which may have been booked again by the properties, all of that creates a problem. I know that pales in comparison to the loss of human life, but it further complicates the issue. And then there is the issue of the TV production. And all of the people that are involved in putting a show like that on the air, and how many people had to travel to New Orleans, how many truckloads of equipment are there? How many people does it take to do that? And those folks were probably planning on being on planes and going home to their families after the game, too. Just a whole series of dominoes starts falling once you move a gigantic event that's going to have 50, 60, 70,000 people in attendance, in addition to the security issues that are at hand. But just an interesting sidebar question on this. Can you secure it in time? The reality is that the person who committed this act could have known that the area was vulnerable way ahead of time. Way ahead of time. I'll tell you how I know about this, but I also believe one of you was called in. And by the way, Jasmine's on the phones today at 888-630-9625, so be nice, be polite, as always. But Phil is calling from Fredericksburg, Virginia. Hello, Phil. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Hello, Michael. Happy New Year. Look, there are things called bollards. They're posts that come up out the ground. And they stop vehicles from doing exactly this. Now, this How did he know that those bollards were going to be down, and why were they down? The only reason they go down is to allow access to a police vehicle or an ambulance to go in there, and then they bring them back up. How was he able to plan an attack so far in advance and know that those bollards were going to be down? The only way that could happen is if the person who controls the bollards was helping it.
Well, Phil, hang on, Phil. It's an interesting theory, but I will already debunk it for you, if you will allow me. The area in question here, in the French Quarter, it regularly does business. It's 24/7, that area of New Orleans. It is a tourist area. There's always somebody open and somebody walking around. But after 2 o'clock in the morning, especially after New Year's and when the bars and the restaurants need to restock their supplies, they regularly open up that area to traffic for deliveries, trucks, etc. And it is generally known that after 2 o'clock in the morning, they allow a little vehicular traffic on Bourbon Street and all of the streets in the quarter, just so those restaurants can get their supplies, food, drinks, etc. But also, Phil, last November, the city put out a report. The bollards have been failing. The bollards have had some problems with them, whether it's from Mardi Gras beads or doubloons falling into the cracks and crevices where the machinery puts them up and down. So they've had to retrofit them. And in advance of the Super Bowl, the city had made a plan to completely upgrade the bollard system. And they told people, not intentionally just putting it out there as a big report, but they put out a public report that details how the bollards were to be replaced and what the maintenance and replacement schedule was, and that during some of these times, those bollards would be inoperable. And they also said, in such times, we will use vehicles to block that access. So the information was out there if you were devious enough to want to find it, but also at the same time, that area, those roadways were open almost every night to allow restocking of those restaurants and bars. It's an unfortunate reality that the information is there. Now, as the superintendent of police talked about knowing all this stuff, in my opinion, they should have also made plans to make certain that they blocked that entire road with not just one car, but blocked the sidewalks as well. This was I think this was the superintendent talking about that very fact.
So we have been aware of the bollard situation for a long time, and we did indeed harden those target areas where the bollards are. We have patrol cars out there as a hard target, as well as with barriers. Now, I want to share with y'all, if you did not know, that this particular terrorist drove around onto the sidewalk and got around the hard target, where he did have a car there, we had barriers there, we had officers there, and they still got around.
They didn't get it completely right, is the answer. New Orleans even admitted that. We put up a car, but we didn't block the sidewalks. This was a fail. And Governor Landrieu was talking about how they're going to make sure they fix every problem there. But it isn't necessarily, I think we can talk about, were there intelligence failures? Is there somebody on the inside who helped? I think it's unlikely, just from the standpoint of there was information out way ahead of time on this one. Way ahead of time. Just saying. But thank you, Phil, for being there. Appreciate you. While we're on the same subject, let's talk to Marshall in Pensacola, Florida. Hello, Marshall. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show. Marshall, are you with me? Or are you across the room thinking we weren't talking to you? All right, we'll come back to you, Marshall, because we have a lot to talk about today. We have a whole lot to talk about today. The superintendent, who I just played you that clip from the New Orleans police superintendent, Ann Kirkpatrick, she's the one that everybody was talking about because of her appearance, and she looks gray-haired, older woman, and a lot of people were saying, why is she in charge? She apparently was the chief in Oakland, and they fired her, and she sued them and won $1.5 million in some kind of settlement. I guess maybe it was an age discrimination. I don't know, but she was fired from Oakland, and then they hired her in New Orleans. And last August, based on credible reports, she also, oddly enough, ran over 2 people with her car. Very, very bizarre. There was some really bizarre stuff coming out of this after all of this happened. But we'll try and keep you posted on every single bit of it. Today, there's just more speculation. We didn't get too much in terms of real clarity on it. Although at the very beginning, as I said yesterday morning, when we had the superintendent and Kirkpatrick came out and called it a terrorist attack, almost immediately, just immediately after that, the assistant agent in charge from the FBI came out and said this.
This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found, and we are working on confirming if it's a viable device or not. Now,
there's so much there that gives you zero confidence in what the FBI is doing. This is the assistant agent in charge who came out and made a statement right after the New Orleans police superintendent told us this is a terror attack. Came out and said this is not a terrorist attack. But we did find IEDs. And there was at least, I believe, 1 IED in the truck, and then there were 2 others they found in the area, and those were both exploded. We haven't heard much more about those devices. We know they were looking for additional devices, but there's still a mountain of information that remains unknown about this entire thing. And we'll get into the reality that a reporter from the New York Post actually got to the home of the guy who was driving the truck and now is dead, got to the guy's home before the FBI did, like hours ahead of the FBI. So again, January 20th cannot come quickly enough. The arrival of Kash Patel, hopefully he will be confirmed easily and quickly. The arrival of Kash Patel, the arrival of Pam Bondi cannot come quickly enough to take the reins of the FBI and the DOJ and get things going on this. But we'll deal with all of this and more, as well as I said, we do have some of the weird stuff that happened on New Year's Eve that was kind of silly on network television, in case you were watching. We'll get to that. And I'm told that Marshall in Pensacola, Florida, is back on the phone. Hey, Marshall, we missed you, but I understand you're there, sir. Hello. Still not there, or you're on a speakerphone. If that's a speakerphone, Marshall, that's a violation of radio rules. First one is turn down your radio. The second one is no speakerphones. You have 2 demerits, Marshall. A third one? Well, that's not good. We'll check it with you after the break. It is the Chris Plant Show with Mike Opelka. Happy New Year, America. It is the Chris Plant Show. Happy New Year. Mike Opelka, that's me sitting in for Chris until he returns next Monday. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. Of course, we're trying to cover everything as it's breaking regarding the terror attack in New Orleans that has taken the lives of at least 15 people, and dozens more are in hospitals trying to recover. And a lot of speculation about what happened, and is it beyond just the driver? Was this a lone wolf, or was this connected to the 4 or 5 people that the FBI told us they were still looking to find? Although that call has gone a little bit silent. We shall see. And then the questions are now arising. I'm not a big believer in coincidences. I mean, just start adding up all this stuff and say, well, that's kind of weird that happened, for example. both of the vehicles involved in the Las Vegas explosion outside the Trump Tower and the terror attack in New Orleans, both were electric vehicles. Both vehicles were rented using an app called Turo, where you rent a car from a private owner. Both of them. Both were driven from one state to another state to commit whatever act was happening. And now we learned that the Las Vegas driver of the Cybertruck rented through Turo, the guy who's dead, that he served at the same military base as the New Orleans terror killer. Is that too crazy of a connection to have two guys both involved in deadly attacks? One blew up a truck that killed himself. 7 people were injured. The other one, at least 15 dead, 30 injured, struggling to survive. But both in the military, both rented vehicles using the same app, and now we learned that both served at the same base. Yeah, it kind of feels like that. I was watching the Twilight Zone marathon over the last day or so, and it feels like there's just a little too much craziness there. And then we have to wonder why it took the FBI so damn long to get to the Houston home of the guy who drove the car and killed the people in New Orleans. Jenny Terre, who used to work with the Daily Caller News Foundation, did great work covering the border, now working at the New York Post. Jenny Terre got to the house hours before the FBI did. Now, how does that happen? How does that happen? I'll tell you how that happens. We don't have an FBI that's focused on actual crime solving. They're focused on making sure all the DEI stuff gets covered. All the training for DEI happens, not the bad guys being rounded up. I know reporters are always hustling, but you would think the FBI would get there before the reporter for the New York Post got there. Just really disturbing. Really, really disturbing. And we haven't gotten yet the report out of the Colorado townhome that is apparently associated with the guy who's dead after driving the Tesla Cybertruck in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. There are so many pieces to get to on this puzzle. And, of course, we have to talk about the Speaker of the House election and some other craziness like New Year's Eve and actual funny stuff that happened. It is Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.